Good morning and happy Sunday mornings with Mel. I am in the pasture again, and if you hear a donkey, the donkey is not happy right now. But I'm at a distance away from my barn, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. Did you ever hear the saying that everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten? Well, sometimes I think some of our faith principles we learned very, very young in Sunday school, if you actually were one of those people who did go. And I'm going to start out by singing a song that I think every Sunday school back in the 60s taught kids. And it talks about the wise man and the foolish man, as Jesus talked about at the Sermon on the Mount. At the end of the sermon, he said, "The wise men who hear them will build their house upon a rock." And it goes, "The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rains came a-tumbling down. The rains came up and the floods came up. The rains came down and the floods came up. The rains came down and the floods came up, and the house on the rock stood firm. But the foolish man built his house upon the sand. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. The foolish man built his house upon the sand, and the rains came a-tumbling down. The rains came down and the floods came up. The rains came down and the floods came up. The rains came down and the floods came up, and the house on the sand went smash." Well, last Saturday, just by God's divine intervention, no one was in the barn. And you can't really see it from here, but the hayloft, which is above in the red part, was filled with thousands of bales of hay. That barn is at least 150 years old, but I'm going to say in the 1930s, they jacked it up, put a wonderful foundation on it, they are really big concrete blocks, and just like that song went, it was built on a very firm foundation. Unlike the Colosseum in Rome, that was part of it was built on a firm foundation and part of it was filled on, you might as well call it a landfill. And after about 1,250 years, in 1349, I hope I'm right, there was an earthquake, and the south outer wall of the Colosseum came down. And last Saturday, it was the north wall of my barn. Well, I'm going to sing another song, and then I'm going to go back to that. But this is an oldie, and it's called "The Church's One Foundation." The church's one foundation is Jesus Christ her Lord. She is his new creation by water and the word. From heaven he came and sought her to be his holy bride. With his own blood he bought her, and for her life he died. Well, as I was saying, the barn was built and rebuilt on a good foundation. And just like our faith, even though sometimes we have a great foundation of going to Sunday school and going to church, and we think that we have that foundation down just right, that we trust in God for everything. In the middle of that barn, there are columns, support columns that supported I-beams, and one of those support beams let loose, is what we think. We don't know. But I think that's sort of how it is in life. We think that we are rock solid and nothing can shake us. And then one of our support beams lets go. whether it's our job, whether it's a relationship, you name it. And it can cause utter destruction in our life. And so that's sort of what I'm going to be preaching on tomorrow at St. John's UCC on Leonard Street in South Amherst, is those support beams, those support columns that we have in our life, and the importance of having a lot of them. Because as life would have it, every now and then one of those support beams just out of the middle of nowhere lets go. And we need to have all the support that we need to stay firm, to stay strong, to not crumble our foundation, and keep us strong in the days ahead. I don't know if many of you know this. It's sort of an old hymn too, but it's called How Firm a Foundation. How firm a foundation, ye saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in his excellent word. What more can he say than to you he has said, to you who for refuge to Jesus has fled? So, when one of those columns lets go in your life, we need to turn to Jesus for strength and endurance to keep moving forward, because that's the march that we're supposed to have. I'm going to end on one of my favorite hymns. I have a lot. It's called My Hope is Built on Nothing Less. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. So if you need a little support because one of your columns let loose, I hope you find your way to God. I hope you find your way to a church, because a church family can be such a great support when one of those columns lets loose. Keep your eye on Jesus, and next week's the big week for me. Someone's excited to see me out here by the pond. I hate being out by the road, but have a good week, and I'll see you all next Sunday morning.